Right guys, we've got 9 questions today in relation to the Ophydian destroyers. Yes, I know I'm in a different place. I will be moving my setup to this room. Haven't quite finished it yet, but we're getting there. Anyway, the questions are, well, there's going to be 9 for the Ophydian destroyers. You guys obviously voted for them, and with the polls there was 1,800 votes. Pretty impressive, and 34% of you guys voted for the Ophydians. Again, this is one of those situations where I thought something else was going to win, so I started preparing a different video, and it didn't turn out that way. We've got a comment from the previous video, and I'm going to go with something I don't normally do here. Damned Legion 40k. He is one of our long-term members. Planet 40k is slowly getting bigger too. 100,000 views and almost 200 subs and over 700 shorts. Thanks for the helpful advice and support, mate. Basically, he's dropping a lot of shorts now. He's got his own little channel going. So guys, if you could kindly subscribe to him, do him a huge favour and help him out. Anyway, let's get into today's Ophydian destroyers then. So we have 9 questions. Before the codex was released, this was my go-to MVP unit because we only had the Awakened Dynasty at the time. Of course, now we've got all different detachments. Everything gets changed up. Points wise are 90 points for 3, 180 points for 6, and for every 3 models you're going to get a Plasmacyte. Right then, let's get on to the first question. Question number 1, why do we field Ophydian destroyers? They can fight, but for me we've got better options that can fight within the codex. The reason why I personally field Ophydian destroyers is for scoring secondary objectives. Now they've got 2 abilities that are extremely valuable for scoring secondaries. The first one is Deep Strike, which coming in from turn 2 onwards, and the second one is Tunneling Horrors. So at the end of your opponent's turn, if this unit isn't within engagement range, you can literally pull them off the battlefield, then in your next movement phase you can bring them back in, and you'll be doing that via Deep Strike as well. So to simply answer that question, is for secondary objectives. Right, I've got another question here, and I'm having to actually refilm this because after filming it yesterday, I've found out a bit more information. I did a bit more research, so bear with me. Let's get the question first. So should you use them in reserves? It's not my question, it's Damn Legion 40k yet again. I've got you twice in this video. Basically they put, should Ophydian destroyers go in reserves or Deep Strike? Now my original answer to this was something you probably wouldn't expect. It was to deploy them on the battlefield. And the reason for that was if you do go second, you can basically hop off with the Tunneling Horrors ability in your opponent's turn 1 and end of their turn 1, and then hop in your turn 1. However, this morning I was looking into it a bit more, and I'm not sure if that's doable. Well, let me explain why. Let me go through this with you. So the Tunneling Horrors ability doesn't mention anything to do with strategic reserves whatsoever. It basically just says in your next reinforcement step in your movement phase you can come back in 9 inches away and so on. Now the reason that's a problem is, in fact, let me compare this. If you go to the Hypercrypt Legion, I'll get it on the screen for you. It's a very similar ability to hyperphasing, but with this ability you get put into strategic reserves, whereas with Tunneling Horrors you don't get put into strategic reserves. So where do you get put is the question. So I've gone into the rules commentary under repositioned units, and bullet number 2 effectively says, if I'm reading it right, don't get me wrong, I might be reading this wrong, they do write these really weird, but as far as I can see, because it is a repositioned unit, rules will basically apply as if they're a reserve unit now. So they're not a strategic reserve unit, they're a reserve unit. Strategic reserves are a type of reserve, but the reverse is not the same. That saying. So if they're a reserve unit now and not a strategic reserve unit, how are they entering? If you go to the Pariah Nexus rules under number 8, which is declare battle formations, reserve units cannot arrive at the battlefield during the first battle round. And then it excludes units that are placed into strategic reserves. And that's where the problem lies, because it's not a unit within strategic reserves. So I don't think they can do it turn 1, and all this time I thought we could, and I've been doing that. Guys, if I'm wrong then let me know, because I'm not really sure. I mean, I'm looking at other abilities in our codex, like the Night Scythe, for example. Quantum Invader allows the flyer to come in on turn 1, but the ability quite clearly says, well, does it overwrite the core rules, in fact? Does it overwrite the Prime Nexus rules because it's a data card ability? I don't think data card abilities trump the rule set, but you could argue that Quantum Invader is trumping the rule set. So therefore, going back to the Tunneling Horrors ability, if it just says you come back in your next turn, then could this also just trump the rule set? That's sort of an argument to say that we can do it, but guys, let me know. What do you think? Can we do it? Can we not do it? But going back to the question from Damn Legion, to try and answer this, if you can do it, I will keep them on the battlefield, deploy them on the battlefield, then hop off instantly. As soon as your opponent's turn's done, hop them off. Gives you a bit more flexibility. If we can't do it, then I would deep strike them, just so that you can get that turn. Well, it's going to be the same thing effectively, isn't it? But I would probably deep strike them for protection, just in case they get shot off the battlefield. But yeah, look, guys, let me know down below. I don't really know the answer to that. What secondaries can they actually be doing? Now, there's quite a few for them to do. Containment off the sides of the battlefield. You can do them behind enemy lines, as we just mentioned. Engage on the fronts, they can assist in the far quarters. Area denial, you can throw them in the centre of the battlefield. Establish locus, again, that will be in the enemy quarters. Cleanse, potentially. Anything that you can just get into the correct position. But what about the fixed stuff? Can you use them for fixed secondaries? Now, a favoured fixed combo of mine is establish locus with behind enemy lines. And the reason being is this single 90-point unit can deep strike in, potentially turn 1, and this one unit alone can score you 7 victory points. You're going to get 3 for behind enemy lines because you're going to have 1 single unit, and then 4 points for established locust if you're doing it in the enemy deployment zone, which will be there because you're behind enemy lines. So 7 victory points for a single 90-point unit is pretty good. It's pretty good. What about the unit size? What's the best unit size when you're playing Ophydian destroyers? Easy answer, always take a 3-man. 3-man unit. If you want more melee attacks with a 6-man, you may as well be looking at the Scorpion destroyers at that point. They're the exact same points cost, and they hit much harder, and they're much more survivable. Better armor save, and you can be led with a Scorpion Lord and so on. It also will help because if you're trying to deep strike in and you've got to stay 9 inches away from enemy models, your footprint is small. 3 Ophydian destroyers is the only footprint you've got, whereas if you've got 6, it's quite large. Also, 6 comes into play when you've got things like blast, so 3 is always best for scoring. So we spoke about the scoring side of them, but what about the damage side? Do they do any damage in melee? Listen, they do fight pretty well, I'm not going to deny it, don't get me wrong. Loads of attacks, 15 for a minimum size unit is decent. The AP and damage is nice, with 2 apiece, but it's the strength that lets it down. It's only strength 4. Only strength 4, which kind of sucks. It kind of sucks. A 3-man unit, if you get the charge off, will kill 3 or 4 intercessors per fight phase. So you can go for the charge if you really want. It's probably going to be a 9-inch charge, and that's providing that you're not doing any actions and things like that. But really, you don't want them within engagement range. If you want to be using your Tunneling Horrors ability, you need to be out of engagement range. So you need to be making sure that you're going to wipe a unit clean, or you're not going to get charged, or basically you need to be out of engagement range if you're going to tunnel. Also, they're not the most durable unit with only a 4+ armor save, so it's something to consider. I know that's not really answering the question in terms of damage, but the second fight phase, after you've been slapped back a bit, if they're all dead, then they've only got that one phase to fight. Ideally, you want them to survive another phase so that you can at least have another go at fighting. This one's a bit of an older question from an older video with the Scorpion destroyers. When do you pop a Plasmacyte? It's a repeat question, but the answer is slightly different. As soon as they get within engagement range, you pop it. Even if it's a real sucky unit, like we used the example of Rippers before. Scorpion destroyers will go straight through Rippers without needing devastating wounds. But Ophydian destroyers aren't really in engagement range that often, because again, you want to be doing Tunneling Horrors. It's very rare, so I would just pop it as soon as. You need to get out of that fight, so clear it out, get it done. They're better for scoring, not fighting, in my opinion. What about the detachment? What is the best detachment for Ophydian destroyers? This one's a huge question. The detachment I wouldn't use is the Hypercrypt Legion, because you get to hyperphase with up to 3 units in competitive gaming anyway, and it's basically the same ability as the Tunneling Horrors. It virtually is exactly the same. The difference is though, you've paid 90 points as a premium to have that ability with this unit, which basically you're paying for Deep Strike. And there's other Deep Strike units that are cheaper. As an example, we got Death Marks. They're cheaper. Now there is a plus side to using the Hypocrite Legion though. It's not going to cost you one of your hyper phases, so you could do 3 plus the Ophydians, and then you could have the enhancement on another unit, which would mean 5 in total maybe. But I would just not bother if you are playing the Hypocrite. They can't be led, so the Awakened Dynasty is a bit of a no-go. They're of course not Canoptic, they've not got the Tryout keyword, of course they're not Overlord, so the Abasis Phalanx and Canoptic Court doesn't really apply. That leaves the Annihilation Legion, and of course they are Destroy Cult units. That involves fighting though, which I've already said earlier. They're better at scoring than fighting. It will assist with a re-rollable charge roll, I guess, and a certain few stratagems that will relate to survivability and being better in combat. But I think they're just better scoring rather than fighting. Personally, the way I would use Ophidians in terms of detachments is I wouldn't build a list around them. I think they can just go into most detachments, more of an afterthought, if anything. So what about the other Deep Strike units that we just mentioned? What's the competition? You've got 3 on the screen for us. We've got the Hexmark Destroyer, which I think is the best unit in the Codex, hands down. I will keep banging that drum over and over. Hexmark Destroyers, 70 points, and you're getting Deep Strike, but you're also getting Lone Op, which is huge, and it's only one single base that you've got to Deep Strike in. If you're using the Hypocrite Legion, you Cosmic Precision it, you get your points, job done. Death Marks are now 65 points. They've gone up by 5. Still cheaper, they've still got Deep Strike. You don't need to be fighting, potentially you can shoot. It's another option there. They of course can't tunnel out naturally, but again with the Hypocrite Legion you could. And the other one is the Trite Praetorians, which have gone down to 100 points, still overpriced in my opinion, but I've got Deep Strike, can fight, can shoot, and so on. There are other ways, like you've got the Veil of Darkness in the Awakened Dynasty for 20 points to give a very similar type of ability where you can pull them off the battlefield and bring them on again. And you've also got the Austrioclave Fulcrum from the Hypocrite Legion, that is, for 20 points you can effectively have Deep Strike. Now that of course is competition for the Ophydian Destroyers, but those 2 enhancements would have to go on a character of course. So that's 9 questions today for the Ophydian Destroyers. Make sure you're getting into the next poll, and I'll see you in the next one.